Welcome back. The next thing we're going to do is the innate personality piece. I got this from reading Carl Jung. It's an interesting thing in that it's one of my favorite pieces in that it's so simple and so actionable that use it in everyday use. How do you use it? Well, it turns out you can observe people pretty quickly and tell what their color is. This gives you great insights into their behavior, into their values. It's a very useful tool that way. The other thing that I used it for quite beneficially was to select jobs that worked well for me. I'm a blue personality, and when I was in blue jobs, I excelled. And other jobs in NASA that are most common are orange jobs. I didn't actually have anything like such an agreeable or rewarding experience in those. My difficulty with it is two things. One is that it's so kind of compelling and so familiar because there are lots of other personality things out there that people kind of, excuse me, get stuck on the idea that this is the essence of what the system's about. It's one small piece, and it brings a lot of comparison with other systems with it, things that don't do anything else. Myers Briggs, which is also Jungian, looks a little bit like this. I don't like it as much. It's about beliefs more than processes. To me, it's a departure from Jung's work as I see it. I'm asked about other personality things. And here's the truth of the matter. If all you have is a personality tool and one that requires an instrument to use, the only real use for it that I know is in recruiting. And in the US, it's illegal. This does not. This has a tool, of course, has a diagnostic, but you can, unlike anything else that I know, you can observe people easily and tell their color, and it's part of everyday conversations with people who understand this. My wife, my children, friends. It's the only thing that I know that you can look at someone and tell. Now you may be thinking you don't believe that, and that's fine. But what you'll see if you do the workshops with me is that people watch videos for 1 to 5 minutes, and almost everybody in the class can tell the person's color and a lot about them. I don't know any other system that works like that. You can watch someone and tell. So, with that introduction, let's jump in, and here we go. Let's review where we've been. We went through some early introductory work. We negotiated some agreements. We looked at this idea of social context and how ignoring it causes failures. We spent some time on emotions and then storylines. Then we looked at how to combine those into personality. And here comes the first of three diagnostics, the personality diagnostic, as we enter episode 16. My same little diagram. It's about how we're born. So there's always going to be a tension between nature and nurture. What that means is there's always going to be a tension between who we are innately and who we are forced to be, mainly by parents and secondarily by our environment. So if you have had parents and environment that are reasonably okay with who you are innately, that's an easy thing to find. If people tried to make you something different and you had to adapt, then that's another story. So this is going to be our panel going forward, our little summary up here. I like things that are actionable. And here's a few of the things you can do with this. Pick jobs that work best for you. Compose teams that are most effective in the sense that they have two characteristics. They're aligned with your work, your primary work, and secondly, they have this diversity of the four dimensions that helps you make better decisions. And it's very useful to communicate. There's a little nuance in this image I want to show you. She's in the orange area. It looks kind of red. We're going to pretend it's orange. And he's speaking orange to her. He's in the green area. She's speaking green to him. When we meet people where they are, we communicate more easily. And I'll show you later that when we appreciate things people appreciate about themselves, it's much more powerful. So we're going to look at these foundations. I think I call it innate personality. It's probably more accurate to call it your personality foundation. A little quiz that's about 90% accurate. Going to look at applications. I love applications. In the workshops, people would look at film clips. Now, because of the restrictions on YouTube, I don't think I can show them. I don't want to risk this not being posted, so I'm not going to show the film clips. You can either get them from me and look at them, or you can get enough information from the title. They're all on YouTube, and you can find them yourself and watch them. And this is an interesting thing. I talked earlier about how I tried to find find an integrating equation, formula, notion between different business books and failed. I'll show you why. It's because these people that write these books only write from one place. Maybe that's a necessary part of writing a book, to write from what you believe in. I'm not sure. So I ask participants to write their name on their workbook cover, and there's a place to do that. Then put their pen or pencil in the other hand and write it again. It's interesting to watch the Asians who write in these Chinese characters, whether it's the Japanese in the original or the Chinese in the simplified, how difficult it is to do. And I asked them, what did they notice? And so now the question is, they noticed that they're much easier able to do fine motor work with one hand. I think for maybe the numbers, 80 and 90% of us are right-handed. Do you think it's innate? Well, babies in the womb tend to favor their right or left hand. Uh, so it's already there. And there's some genetic structure that shows this is also the case. Now, this is a really important point. We all use both hands, right? I mean, I broke my right hand twice. Once in a bicycle accident, another fall. And in that case, I had a cast. I learned to use my left hand. As soon as my hand got well, I went back to my right hand. So we have an innate preference for one hand or the other. If you ask me about my handedness, I don't say I'm 80% right-handed and 20% left-handed. I say simply, I'm right-handed. I want you to think exactly the same way. Your innate preference for your personality is just like your handedness. Name it by the color. Do not use the instrument in here to try and get some proportionality. It doesn't work for that. And don't think that way. Just use this, what I call binary terminology. So can you imagine you were born with an innate personality that was most about caring for people, relating with people, loving ideas and thinking, or being organized? That's the claim here, and it comes from Carl Jung. So there are two processes: the emotional deciding process. And I did a lot of this development work when I was working as a consultant for aerospace companies, particularly TRW. I got to know the clients pretty well. And one of the discriminating factors was I watched people who would take events very personally. And so when management did something which looked stupid to them, and that was not unusual, they would be really down about it. And and so these people turned always out to be emotional deciders, which meant their color was either green or yellow, hence the green and yellow blending. The logical deciders would kind of remark and move on. They weren't caught up in it. Just, well, it's just management. Boom, boom. So that was the early indicator of the difference that I could see watching people very reliably. I was a strategic advisor for the dean of the business school, Larry Sengel. I mentioned him in the last video, and he was a yellow. And he would start faculty meetings saying, I want results we can all feel good about. My blue brain, my logical decider brain ran, what's that got to do with it? Because I'm into the logical side of things. Another way to think about this is, imagine you're robbed and you go to your emotional deciding friend. They might say, are you okay? Were you injured? How are you feeling? How can I comfort you? I feel so sad about this, this natural empathy. Your logical deciders might say, what did they take? Are you insured? How'd they get in? Can you replace things? Well, these things happen. So let's go to the information. The intuitors, about 30% of the population, insightful, big picture, creativity. Sensors, which is about 70% of the population, love data, details, and so forth. So you might ask an intuitor to describe an apple, and I might say, well, it's a red fruit. Well, sometimes it's a green fruit. Actually can be a yellow fruit. Can actually grow on a tree as a crabapple tree and look like a crab, remind me of a crab, a red crab, boiled crab. It's also a computer, and it's New York City. Your sensor friend might say, well, it's a fruit with a smooth skin, spotted red, roughly spherical, crunchy, tart, tasty. So I'm going to set up this little quiz, and you can take this either buy a copy of my book or email me, get a current version of this little test. It's very simple. I don't know how to make an instrument that doesn't require you to imagine a context. Maybe someone else can do it. I don't know how. So I ask you to think about where you can be your most natural self, home or at work. Now, Jung said your job early in life is to build your personality on your innate foundation and develop the rest later in life. So if you're over 25, maybe in the 40s, and you might be thinking about expanding your particularly into your emotional side, perhaps, you might want to reflect on earlier in life before you were doing this kind of thinking and work. What I'm saying is your early life might be the clearest signal for finding this. We have a name for this crisis is called midlife crisis. It often involves a new car and their new relationship. So choose which is more true. Some might be difficult. Don't worry about that. Just pick the one. And I think it's best to choose quickly. I think the longer you take, the more likely you are to be asking yourself, who do I want to be, not who am I? So here it is. It's 7 questions twice. Very simple, very fast. And this is how I would answer it. I just want to give you an example of one instance, the difference. Harmony is important to both the emotional decider and the logical decider. But harmony is intrinsically valuable to the emotional decider, and it's just a means to an end for the logical decider. The intuitors rely on their inner knowing. This is our intuition of kind of integration of past experience. We know, and the sense that person wants to look at the observations, the data, the presenting facts. So what you do is you check. There's intentionally 7 questions. Just check one side or the other. That means you'll always have one side that's got more. Then you go to this little coding sheet, and if you circled emotional deciding and intuitive information, your green personality, and so forth. So once you think you know your color, this is set up for Zoom. We gave the participants 4 banners of each of the 4 colors with a leader badge on it. And they can go to their Zoom and click on virtual background and select their color. Now, the valuable part of that is that that's present throughout so people can comment, just like if you wore a physical badge in a workshop. And also, when I look at a team distribution, we can see immediately the color distribution approximately, which is good enough. I also give an action item now to go home and do this work with your spouse. There's two or three reasons for doing this. One is that it's a great learning experience for you and when you teach it. Secondly, you'll find out a lot about your relationship. So if you're green or yellow, that's pretty easy. If you're green orange, that can be very challenging. You're so different. And if you're anything mixed in with the yellow is easier because at least one person is absolutely committed and knows how to build relationships. And in my case, my wife and I are both blue. We're both technically trained people. And it's interesting to know this because we can be having an argument and just stop saying, we've got to stop being so damn blue. We'd like to be contrary as blues. So there's a section in the book on my book called the Imago Theory of Relationship. I don't know if it's right. I'm not even endorsing it, but it plays into these kind of ideas. And I think it's surely interesting. I'm not going to take time to develop it here. I think it's very interesting to look at teams. So in workshops, when I work with intact teams in the US, we record these on a flip chart when I'm doing used to do in-person workshops. And then I'd go up and would analyze it. So the first thing we'd look at is where the most people are, which tells us which tasks they most naturally perform. And look at how the distribution might have arisen. If the leader formed the team, you'll find almost every time a preponderance of the leader's color on the team. Why? We like people who are like us. If I'm working at a NASA center or an aerospace company where the education requirement is high, I've had occasions where most of the people in the room are PhDs. That influences what the team looks like. The organization or task, hopefully they're pretty well optimized to that. And we'll talk about how this has to shift for entrepreneurial companies to late phase companies. And then how 4D is your team. So why would that be a good thing? I think that the best reason to have all four dimensions is you look at all four aspects of human performance in any decision if all four people are present. So the greens, what do they bring? Deep values, empathy, and appreciation. For example, I had a green on my team with the astrophysics division who I thought wasn't really going to add much value. But what he did was incredible. We'd be having a big debate about what to do, and he would say, stop. The only question is what's in the best interest of the agency. And that would just end the conversation and we'd decide and move forward. The yellows, harmony, collaboration, friendships. Everybody likes these people. The blues, innovation, creativity, etc. You want to think about a extreme blues, you could think of Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. The oranges, direction, process, and certainty. So everyone has something to offer, and I like having all four. So this is a video. We're not going to watch it, but I will tell you after the fact what happened. So it's it's a video of Apollo flight director Gene Kranz preparing his team for the first moon landing. And he's probably the best known and most famous of the NASA flight directors. And also there's another person speaking in the video, just tell you who it is. And I want you to see, can you tell from what he says what his innate personality is? So in the video, one of the first things he tells you is, of all the flight directors, I'm probably the most emotional. What's that tell you? That tells you his color is green or yellow. Then when he speaks to the team and says, we are getting ready to make history. When we walk out of this room as a team. We'd either landed, we had aborted, or we had crashed. Now, I want you to think about this. A blue would say, I am getting ready to make history, likely. And what's really incredible about this is that he says, we had either landed, we had aborted, or we had crashed. He's not in space. He's sitting in Houston. The astronauts are out here in the limb. So it's just we. So you can see this, and I think it's a 2-minute, 3-minute clip, completely unambiguous. So why would NASA pick a personal side leader, a yellow person for this incredibly important job? And I'll tell you why. People like Gene Kranz have engineering degrees. He was a fighter pilot. He had to have mastered the orange. He had to learn it and do it. So he's got the yellow inherent and the orange learn. So he's got the whole thing covered. Also, people like to work for yellow people because yellows like people. So people like to work for people who naturally naturally like people. So these are the ingredients that led him to not just be selected, but be incredibly successful. Another example, I was contacted by Marilyn Henson, the CEO of Lockheed Martin, and she told a little story about being asked to speak at the Air Force Academy on leadership. And she said she looked at Pew Research, what leadership traits matter first. So I want you to think about this. What color would look at data? Then she said, I chose these four, and the sequence of things matters. Number one, decisive. Number two, trustworthy. Number three, compassionate. Number four, innovative. She'd never seen the 4D system, but she intuitively got it. You think she's 4D able? You bet. What is she named first? The orange. Do you know what color is most likely to be the CEO in America? 80%. So what color is she? Orange. This will inform, if you work for her, how to communicate with her, how to brief her, etc., etc., etc. Powerful stuff. So people often want to find one thing, and I try and give a more holistic picture of this. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to stop this video now to make these digestible, and I'll call this episode 17, and we'll pick this up and continue in a few minutes, if that works. Okay, thank you all, and see you to continue in a few minutes.